Welcome to the Pride Perspectives radio show here on KSQD. My name is Rob Darrow. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Our show today is the LGBTQ plus history exhibit at London Nelson Center and the LGBTQ plus history walk at the MAH with Pat Dellin and Kian Hladky. Pat, I'm glad you're here with me today. How are you doing?
Hey, Rob. Good to see you again.
Do you want to introduce yourself, a little about your pronouns?
Oh, sure. I'm Pat Dellin. My pronouns are she and her.
Our Pride Perspectives radio show is here on KSQD every other Sunday from 5 to 6. You can find all of our recordings and updates on the Santa Cruz Pride website, santacruzpride.org. Our show is guided by the following beliefs. We believe that Santa Cruz County is thriving partly because of the contributions of LGBTQ plus people, and LGBTQ plus people in Santa Cruz County are thriving because of the broader Santa Cruz County. We believe in the words of Jewish poet Emma Lazarus that none of us are free until all of us are free. On this show, you will hear us refer to queer history and LGBTQ plus history. For us, these terms are interchangeable and refer to people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, anywhere on the gender identity spectrum and who they are attracted to. All are welcome to be part of this radio show. Our last show, we featured Kurt Kyer and Patrick Meyer. They talked a lot about our local LGBTQ plus history, but also how they ended up on the March on Washington's. There are several LGBTQ gay and lesbian March on Washington's. Pat, were you part of any of those, or do you remember hearing about those?
I was definitely part of one in the 70s.
Were you?
I don't remember what year it was.
Uh-huh.
I was living in Colorado at the time, but I did go there.
I think that was the first one. What do you recall from it?
It was huge.
Uh-huh.
I had been to, because I grew up in New York City, I had been to a lot of anti-Vietnam War demonstrations in Washington, D.C. also.
Right.
And it seemed, frankly, as big as that to me.
Yeah.
So it was very impressive.
Yeah, it is really impressive to look back on those early marches that brought visibility to LGBTQ plus people. That's what Kurt and Patrick talked about. Kurt remembered that he got arrested at one of those, ended up protesting in front of the Supreme Court and was arrested, shared that whole story on our last show. Patrick shared about those early years of the men's club at the London Nelson Center. So anyway, anybody can listen to that past show. It's on our podcast and that sort of thing. So that's fascinating. You were there too. You've been in lots of different things.
Yeah, I know. You keep on discovering things I was involved in.
Yeah, I was at the history fair yesterday at London Nelson Center, and as I was talking with people, I realized all these things keep popping up, and that's the fun part of being in this community is that, because as we both know, the LGBTQ plus history is so vibrant and rich in our community. You probably keep learning new things every once in a while too.
I absolutely do.
Yeah, with all those different pieces. All right. Well, we're going to talk more with you in just a second. We're talking with our guests, Pat and Kian, about different events that are happening. Pat was the one involved with the London Nelson Center that is free to attend and goes on until June 5th. And the new Queer Story walking tour created by the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History, or MAH, which will continue on forever. We'll talk with Kian about that in just a second. Just as a reminder to our listening audience, as we look back on our LGBTQ plus history in Santa Cruz County, we like to claim that Charlie Parkhurst, as one of our first, perhaps queer-related people, for those of you who may not know about Charlie was a stagecoach driver in Central California who grew up on the East Coast and then moved to California around 1850. Now, if you remember your history, the California Gold Rush began in 1849, and California officially became a state in 1850. Charlie had heard about that, and so Charlie moved out to California and was known as the best damn driver in the West. And at one point, they were kicked by a horse and lost an eye and became known as One-Eyed Charlie. After Charlie retired, Charlie moved to the Santa Cruz Mountains and passed away in 1879. As their body was being prepared, it was learned that Charlie had female body parts. So, as we look back, Charlie was assigned female at birth, but lived out their life identified as a male. They are buried in the Watsonville Cemetery. So, because they lived in Santa Cruz, we like to think of Charlie as being queer. Who knows? Nobody ever talked to them. I when I work with groups of students, I say, do you think Charlie would have identified as transgender? It's a good conversation at the time. Nobody knows for sure because nobody ever asked Charlie those questions. But certainly Charlie was not straight. We do know that much. And Charlie identified as male in their later years and thankfully lived in our county. So we claim Charlie as one of our first out persons in, like I said, the 1800s. Now, after 1879, nationally, the Stonewall riots took place in New York in 1969, which most historians mark as the beginning of the contemporary LGBTQ plus rights movement. Across Santa Cruz County, the 1960s and 1970s were a time when more people were more comfortable coming out as queer. At UCSC, the feminist studies program was developing, and it caused more women to come out as lesbian and became involved with the Women's Music Festival in the Santa Cruz Mountains and the development of the Women's Health Collective in Santa Cruz. At the same time, others were helping to organize the first Santa Cruz Pride that took place in 1975. So, again, I just want to remind people of these dates. The 1800s, we got Charlie Parkhurst, 1969, the Stonewall Riots, 1975, the first Santa Cruz Pride. And I put that context because that's where the LGBTQ plus history exhibit at London Nelson is all about, showcasing all of the people and stories and events that occurred after 1975. And Pat, who has collected and organized and implemented the exhibit entitled Out of the Closet and Into the Streets, LGBTQ plus history across Santa Cruz County, is here. And Pat, can you give us a quick history about how you ended up in Santa Cruz and what got you involved in the LGBTQ movement in Santa Cruz?
Sure. It is true that I ended up in Santa Cruz. It was kind of like going across from New York to the West Coast. And I came here really not knowing anything about Santa Cruz. Somebody brought me down here from Berkeley one day, and I thought, well, this is a great place. But I was basically a hippie at that time, and a bisexual, but, you know, it was kind of the sexual revolution then, so we didn't really have labels.
Sexual revolution, what told you it was a sexual revolution at the time? What were you reading things? Were you meeting people? That's an interesting term.
Yeah, I mean, so I had already gone through college by the time I got here.
Oh, okay, so college.
So,
yes, people, lots of people learn in college. Active in college, great.
Right.
As some of my best memories are from college, right? Go ahead,
so,
sorry.
It was quite apparent. Well, there were a lot of things happening at that point. It was the beginning of the environmental movement. Of course, the civil rights movement had been happening throughout the 60s. I mentioned anti-war. All sorts of things, and certainly feminism, which we called women's liberation at that point. But
what was your degree in college?
Anthropology.
Is that right?
Same as Kian. So it's kind of a connection there.
We've got two people here tonight who really like to examine other people and their behaviors.
And culture, right? Yeah. So the cultures of people. So I just fell in with a group of lesbians, and I just thought, well, these people are great. And really, I was just living my life, and somebody said, tomorrow we're going down to San Lorenzo Park, and that turned out to be the very first gathering of LGBTQ people, their first Pride, what we now call Pride, but we didn't call it Pride right then.
Right.
And that was in 1975, and it was this gathering of 200, 300 men, women, and whatever, songs and all sorts of things. And now we've had a Pride gathering, as you well know, because Rob has been running Pride for several years, amongst other things that he does, for 51 years now. It's going to be the 51st year.
So before we leave that, back in 1975, when you showed up at that event, did you think to yourself, oh, we're making history or anything like that?
Not at all. Oh, except I would say we knew it was a revolutionary act.
Okay.
Because it is true. We were definitely in a bubble. I mean, we were hippies, and so, it was very much, many of us were hippies. I shouldn't talk for everybody, but we were into being inclusive and experimenting and doing different things.
Right.
And we also knew that the mainstream society did not accept us at all, that most of us were not out to our parents or too many, if we were working in a straight job. We were in the closet mainly.
Yeah.
But not to our friends. So with our friends, we're out. But to go out in public, actually, I mean, we would be in public a lot of times, but I mean, to go on masse
as a group
in public and say we are gay, because that's what we called ourselves then, and we're here. And we're not going anywhere. And we like ourselves, and you don't need to change us or anything. That was a revolutionary act. So we sort of knew that, but on the other hand, it was just like, let's go out into the park and have fun. So there's a little bit of that. And a little bit of knowing that we were not maybe making history, but trying to move things along.
Something was important was happening.
That it had some political import. But that wasn't uppermost on our mind, for sure.
But we are thankful to the people that held on to all the information from those years and that sort of thing. Now, speaking of those years, so what kind of work were you doing throughout Santa Cruz? And I know you mean retired.
For a job?
For a job, I mean, people had to pay money during the day.
Yes, we would work jobs every once in a while. And
it must have been easier to live in Santa Cruz in those days.
It was a lot easier to live in Santa Cruz and not have much of a job. So I worked like at the Brussels sprouts factory. So if you've been here for years, you would know that existed back then. God, what other jobs did I have? I know I helped deliver Sentinels, the Santa Cruz Sentinel. Oh, God, I can't even think of what jobs I had. It was...
but you worked for the transit agency for a number of years.
Yeah, but that wasn't until the 1980s when I came back. I went to Colorado for a little.
Got it.
2 of the years in the 70s, I was bumming around Europe.
Okay.
So, and there, I had odd jobs there too. But I lived here for 2 years and then came back in the early 80s. And it happened to be 2 years, like there also was the Amazon Women's Music Festival in the hills of Santa Cruz County, which was a really defining moment for our community here. And so, I was involved with things there. I was helped with the not the Lavender Reader, that was later. The Ruby Fruit Reader, which was a zine for lesbians in mid-1970s.
Right.
So, and then I was in Colorado. I did, a bunch of stuff, and then I came back here in the 80s and later got involved with the Diversity Center and the Triangle Speakers and fundraising, and then eventually got involved about 2013 in the Trailblazers History Project, which all the rest of this is an outgrowth from.
So what caused you to start getting interested in history?
Yeah, it wasn't because I had a great interest in history in general. It really was because I ran into Larry Friedman at a Pride celebration. One of the major great things about Pride is you see people together. You haven't seen for a while. And he said, hey, the next year is going to be the 40th anniversary of Pride. How, it would be great if we get some people together who used to live here to come back and visit. Because there were a few of us here, but most people had moved away from the 70s and been other places. So in any case, from that, I said, yeah, let's do that. And I was working at the Diversity Center to get a reunion together. We had got about 200 people come from various places. It was great. And with that, we brought some artifacts for people to see from the 70s and 80s. And from that, I had gone to the Diversity Center that had archives, what they called archives.
Right.
That was when Jim Brown was heading it. And they were just cardboard boxes up in their little attic space, but they were all jumbled together. And that's where I found the only copy I've ever found of the first program for the first Pride.
The poster?
The poster, but it was just a poster, not a program. But it was underneath like heavy things, and it was amazing that it survived. But at this point, it is at the MAH, and it is protected. And it was one of the inspirations, really, with primary inspiration, like we have to protect some of these things because it was a miracle that existed still. And we could see that, and we could see also from the reunion that we had back then, that there was a lot of interest in seeing some of the old things that we were working on.
So at that point, when you found those archives up in the Diversity Center attic, About what age were you? What was
What
it? The
age were
50s?
you?
I mean, were you in your 40s, your 50s?
Oh,
or?
no, wait. No, I was older than that because it was in 2012. So,
Okay.
So I was in my
it's just
60s,
interesting to think
early
about,
60s.
where you were when you were here in 1975 for the first Pride.
I was in my 20s
and then
then.
now in our 60s, we look at this stuff and know the value of it much more than we would if we were younger at the time.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about how that stuff ended up at the MAH.
Sure. So I got some things together, and then, we did the thing, and I, again, talked to Larry, who, has really great ideas, apparently, because he said to me, I know that Dan Dickmeyer gave some of his old papers to the MAH, and they took them in as an archive.
Right.
And Dan Dickmeyer was also one of the first, as Larry was, the one of the organizers of the first Pride. And he said, why don't you go to the MAH and see if they might want to save some of these things?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the MAH, talked to Marla Novo, and who was the archivist at the time. She works there at a higher level now, and she was so welcoming to me. She says, "Yes, I'm so happy you came here, and we would love to have your things."
Wow.
And after that, I embarked on a couple of years of gathering information from various people around the country, frankly, as well as locally.
Right, who had grown up here, been part of the movements here. Well, that's great to know all that. We'll talk more about the exhibit in a minute, but let's meet Kian Hladky from the Santa Cruz MAH, who researched and developed the Queer Story walking tour, which we're going to talk about as well. Kian, welcome, and can you give us a little quick history about how and when you arrived in Santa Cruz and what brought you to UCSC?
Yeah, of course. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I came to Santa Cruz for college to go to UCSC.
Mm-hmm.
I picked UCSC. I mean, why wouldn't I pick it? It's the most beautiful UC campus,
It was a good fit for you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. The nature, the town, everything around it. I also like just being close to the Bay Area and like San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
It's just a really wonderful place to be.
And what's your major in school, and what are you studying?
Yeah, I'm double majoring in philosophy and anthropology.
Oh. Mm-hmm. And how would those two majors cause you to end up in the MAH?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so I work at the MAH through the UCSC Excel program,
mm-hmm.
which helps humanities students work at local organizations in Santa Cruz. So by being a philosophy major, I was able to apply to this part-time position.
Uh-huh.
And while anthropology is a humanities major, I feel like both of my majors have helped me kind of learn the value of like local culture and history and like, human representation. That's something I'm really interested in studying. And I feel like I can kind of like be a part of that by working this position, which is really exciting.
So you show up at the MAH on day one or whatever, and do they just say, here's a project, go work on it? Or did they say, here's a variety of things, what do you want to work on, or what?
Yeah, it started, pretty small scale, with simple tasks at the museum. Organize this cabinet, help us design this.
Uh-huh.
I'm working with a couple other fellows, design this activity sheet, and then eventually I work on quite a few different things. I help with the school tours, the events we have, outreach, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually it was my second quarter working there. So this was maybe January or February. They offered me the chance to work on this walking tour project. Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about your connection to the Santa Cruz County LGBTQ plus community, because you ended up working on an LGBTQ plus walking tour. So it's just interesting that you ended up with that. But I'm just curious how you're connected.
No, it's kind of funny because I don't personally identify with the LGBTQ plus community. But, growing up, I've had a lot of people who are active members of the community.
Right.
It's just something that's been around me.
Yeah.
Although I haven't personally engaged with it to that kind of level.
Yeah.
And so when I was offered this project, it was something kind of slightly outside my comfort zone, but I was also really excited to be a part of it. And, the more that I researched, the more that I learned, I kind of realized, how important this is. Really, it is integral to Santa Cruz's history. And I think it's something that's really important.
Well,
and something I'm excited to share. Great.
So we'll talk more about that after we're going to take a short break. One One of the big events coming up from Santa Cruz Pride is called Queerlantis, and during the break you're going to hear some information about that. You're listening to the Pride Perspectives radio show here on KSQD 90.7 FM, 89.7 FM, and KSQT 89.7 Prunedale, serving the counties of Santa Cruz and Monterey counties, and we'll be right back. Queerlantis, a micro-festival of music, drag, and fun, is on June 6th. Irene the Alien is featured along with local drag artists and bands. Tickets, santacruzpride.org. Welcome back to the Pride Perspectives radio show here on KSQD. My name is Rob Darrow, and today our topic is the LGBTQ plus history exhibit at London Nelson Center and the LGBTQ plus history walk at the MAH with Pat Dellin and Kian Hladky. So, Kian, we were talking a little bit about your project. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about the walking tour and what it's about?
Yeah, of course. So the project itself is an adaptation of the MAH's Queer Story exhibit. Mm-hmm. This is basically, it's a self-guided walking tour that I've been helping to design, adapting the information and history that is found in our exhibit, but also things that I found in other places like databases online and online resources. Yeah. So it's going to be basically a self-guided brochure that we'll be giving out, and it's centered around downtown, Santa Cruz queer history. Yeah.
How did you find all those locations?
Yeah, I started just on the online MAH Queer Story exhibit and then the physical one as well. Right. And then from there, I kind of found things I was interested in, obviously centered around downtown because, that's where the museum's located. Right. And I wanted to keep it walkable. You can
only walk so far.
Yeah, exactly. And so the more I researched, there's the online archival database with lots of information there from the museum. And then I went further, looked for blog posts and those kinds of things.
So Kian's talking about the online Queer Story exhibit, which Pat and I were both involved with. You might be interested to know that back in 2019, we were working on that, started talking about it, helped design and come up with all the components to that. We're all set to put up the physical exhibit in 2020, and then the pandemic hit. So for the MAH, this was their first online exhibit, which is on forever. So it's good to know that it continues on today and benefits Kian and other people along those lines. So Pat, as far as the LGBTQ plus exhibit at London Nelson Center, tell us about the inspiration of that and how it intersects with all the archives and queer story stuff that's at the MAH.
Sure. So actually, this exhibit is actually a kind of an outgrowth of last year's exhibit at the MAH. And that last year's exhibit was about the 50th anniversary of Pride. And the reason I even did that is because you, Rob, came to me and said, "Hey, how about we do an exhibit? We have the space at the MAH we could use." And I said, "Okay, well, let me
Isn't
take
that
care
great
of
how
that."
we keep going back and forth here?
Right.
Oh, one little phone call. Why don't you come on by?
And
In fact, that's how this one started, right?
Yes.
You called me and said, "Hey, London Nelson wants us to put this up. Why don't you come on down?"
Yeah, so I'm not the only one who's suggestible, apparently. You are too.
It goes both ways.
So we were very, happy to do that exhibit. That had a lot of artifacts and things from the Queer Story archives at the MAH. And I'm glad you, Rob, mentioned the online exhibit. Yeah. I believe it's the only online exhibit that the MAH has. Yep. So it was just accidental that the pandemic happened. Right. But it means that it's a great resource that people from all over the country can access.
Continue to use, yep.
And then also there's a lot of educational resources that the MAH has developed and also that you've developed, Rob, I know. And you can get information about all that by going to the MAH website or the Santa Cruz Pride website that has this history page and leads you to history efforts for our community that a lot of organizations are doing. So I thank you for that, Rob. So, but in terms of this year's exhibit,
Right.
yeah, London Nelson, Rachel at London Nelson said we have this space, and there was the prom, which is a queer kind of play that was happening, and there were a lot of different events happening. She said, why don't you come in and put something up in where we usually do art exhibits in our hallways? And I thought that was just a great idea, because the London Nelson is open practically all the time. So this exhibit is free of charge. You can just have to come into the London Nelson building whenever it's open. And a lot of people take all sorts of different classes there. So even when we were putting the exhibit up and we hadn't even put it up, people were just coming out of a class and looking at things. So it makes it really available to a lot of different people. And that's very exciting to me. And they can get, because I've listed on there in various places how they can get more information. Because, of course, with any exhibit, the archive, the Queer Story Archive at the MAH, is many, many, many boxes of material. We just have some things in the exhibit.
Right.
But if you want to learn more, you can... and by the way, they digitized all that information at the MAH through a grant that John Laird, Assemblymember John Laird, was able to get for the MAH. And that also, I believe, is one of the only not exhibits, but only part of the archives that is online.
Right, through the
and
MAH.
so that, I mean, we were just benefited so much from the MAH's relationship with the MAH, and we're so thankful to them for making all these things available.
How did you decide what should go into the exhibit, and can you identify 2 or 3 things that are really that stand out to you?
Sure. So I was very, an exhibit is very visual. And so we have a lot of photographs, and they're photographs back from the 70s all through the years. And with all these photographs, we also have a little text about the context of the time and some quotes from people about what they were experiencing at the time. And I'm really happy about that part too, that you get to, both read about it and see things. We have some actual, artifacts in a display case. We, of course, have to keep the artifacts safe, so we have, not that many artifacts. But one of my favorite things that is in the display case is a list of things from the Santa Cruz AIDS Project in the 1980s, when AIDS was not a treatable disease in any way.
Right.
It was a very horrible thing that was happening in the country, and of course a lot of anti-gay sentiment came out, and the president of the time, Reagan, was very dismissive of spending any money on this health crisis that was affecting the world, and affecting individual people. So we were being discriminated against even more because of the AIDS crisis. So we really had to, as a community, come together and support each other. And so one of the pieces of paper in the display case describes the buddy system. The Santa Cruz AIDS Project, SCAP it's also called, had a system with a lot of different services for people who had AIDS. And one of them was to have a buddy and how to interact with somebody who has AIDS. And it's things like that really take you back to that time, whether you lived or even alive then or not, but take you back to a time where things were a lot different than they are now, and how people supported each other. And so that's one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah, a lot of people may not know this, but the Santa Cruz AIDS Project became a model for other AIDS projects across the nation. The people from that group went to different conferences and shared what was happening, that buddy system for one, which became a model for other AIDS projects throughout the nation in a variety of ways. And this is what I've discovered over and over as I continue to research and talk to people about the LGBTQ plus movement here in Santa Cruz County, is that so much of what we've done here, we've shared with others, and it's benefited the broader community as well. So that's interesting knowing about those topics. So Kian, for you now on the walking tour, what are some of your favorite places that you discovered? What would be, if you had to pick the top 2, what would you say are the top 2 and why?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for the history itself, there's like the London Nelson Center, of course, was, a very core, community meeting space that was really, they had the, weekly gay men's and lesbian women's groups.
Right.
And then, of course, today it's still a huge place. So I think that's a big one.
Uh-huh.
Also included is the site of the first diversity center, which used to be downtown. And, that's important because it's still around. It's still a great resource.
Right.
And, even back then they were doing a lot of great work.
Do you remember that first opening of the first one, Pat?
Oh, absolutely. I would go there often. It was in an alley.
Right.
So, it's called an alley too, but it's behind the parking garage.
What's it called? What alley is it called?
I don't remember what alley.
I believe it's Commerce Lane.
Commerce Lane.
Yeah,
Okay.
There we go.
Like
So-
behind the parking garage.
Yeah, so
Right.
behind Pacific Avenue,
Right, yeah.
next to the parking garage.
Yeah.
So not that visible, but of course we were not that visible, and a lot of people would not want to come to a place like that
Yeah.
to necessarily out themselves in 1980.
Right.
Because there was a lot of backlash against people individually, and a lot of people really were not out at work at all,
Right.
or out in the community in any way, just with their friends. So it. Of course, we had very little money too, so it was not an expensive place to rent. But there were a lot of meetings that happened there, a lot of gatherings, and it was very important in terms of us creating community and supporting each other, because we needed to support each other. It was, as bad as this world is now towards queer people and towards trans people in specific, it was even worse then because none of us could be out, and all that vitriol was against every one of us. So that was a very important place. And also I wanted to go back to London Nelson that you mentioned. Again, they from the get-go, when they first were created in the late 70s, they welcomed us with open arms, our community. And, some of these groups, like the gay men's group that had a lot of people coming to them often, were able to meet there. And it was really, again, a time when most places wouldn't accept us. And so it's nice to have these spaces these safe spaces where we could gather and create community and support each other.
At the center there, do you remember having meetings, Pat, or
Yeah,
what were some of the things that you recall?
Well, we used to have what was it? It was called codependence. We were very much into codependence meetings at the time. There's things that sort of come and go.
So
in
different
terms of
meetings with
fashion.
different groups of people.
Yeah, and then different groups of people,
Uh-huh.
and I remember working on various things there.
Yeah. But it sounds like you have fond memories of that first space.
Oh yeah, it was a very important place for us.
How big was it?
It was not well. I can't. It's not a visual medium we're on here, but it was like kind of the size of. I'd probably say about 600 square feet. I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Couple of little rooms.
Couple of rooms.
Yeah.
And all staffed by volunteers in those early
Volunteers,
days, right?
yeah. There was no
Yeah.
money.
Right.
Frankly, I don't know how they even had the money to pay the rent,
Yeah.
but I think Santa Cruz was a lot less, expensive at that time. So somehow it was definitely a low rent place because of its location in this alleyway.
Yeah. So, Kian, earlier you were talking about the things you learned in the process. What are some of the things that stand out to you that you learned?
Yeah, I think one thing that really I found interesting to study was one of the locations is Blue Lagoon, which I don't know if they would consider themselves this today, but back then it was kind of known as a gay bar. And that got me, researching these other gay bars around Santa Cruz. And I think that was just something really fun to research. It's kind of like the way it seemed from like all these different perspectives of like people's blog posts online is that there was really like a booming kind of nightlife or like queer nightlife scene in Santa Cruz, which I thought was kind of fun to
How were you
research.
able to research those? What does that look like?
Yeah, because there aren't that many resources online about it. There's a lot of different people would post reviews of like, this place back in the day it used to be a gay bar, and say those kinds of things. And it's just kind of fun to imagine like what those places must have been like.
Would you find those resources in the MAH, in the archives there, or other places?
There may be some in the archives, but probably more just online.
So just Googling certain things, you found certain things that
Yeah,
popped up.
there also, I know there were these posters on like specific bars that had been researched more thoroughly. There was like Mona's Gorilla Bar.
Right. Dragon Moon.
Yeah, Dragon Moon. Those were some big ones. And
Right.
yeah, I just thought those were fun to like imagine.
So that
what
caught
was
your
going on
attention
there.
the most.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like I just pretty recently turned 21, and so I'm kind of like
yeah,
trying to think like what
Yeah.
it must have been like back in the day, be part of this kind of scene.
Did you go to any of those bars, Pat?
Well, yes, I did. The one that's where Moe's Alley is right now, was that Monique's Grill? You know, I
Yeah.
get them all mixed up.
Right,
at
the
this
one out
point.
by Dominican.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it had a dance floor, because it was the 70s. It was like a
Right.
disco time. It had a dance floor with a lit up kind of
Lit up dance floor. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard about that.
panels.
Right.
I always thought, like, is this going to break?
Uh-huh.
It had pool. We would often just go play pool, but really. The places we hung out, because this was before the first diversity center. The first diversity center is much later.
Right.
So I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s.
Right.
It was one of the only places to hang out. We did have a few women's cafe type places. And bookshop / cafe, and then Herland again was in the 90s, so much later, but kind of on that same
Yeah.
level. That was a place that often women came to, and we.
Right.
I didn't play music, but people would play music and chat at the coffee house. But the bars were the main place where we would
Well,
would
that's where you
go.
met people.
Yeah, that's where
right?
you met people. That's
Yeah.
where, again, it was a safe place.
Yeah.
And you got to dance and.
Yeah, those were I was in high school in those years and was not out, so I didn't know they even existed, but I've learned a lot about them from talking to other people. And Kian, I would agree with you that the research really is talking to the right people who remember those stories. And now you've got one more person. Pat's got a lot of them. That's a fascinating part of Santa Cruz LGBTQ plus history is you start talking to somebody and then they have these memories and then you go, oh, and then you kind of connect the pieces, which I imagine that was the same for the walking tour. And what caused you, or what part of your research determined what locations you chose?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not like, a history expert or like a.
Well, you are now.
I mean, so really just, I think working with other people, talking to you, of course, talking to people at the MAH and being like, oh, like what kind of, because obviously there's a lot of potential of like what perspectives are being shown here.
Right.
And like the types of histories that we're representing. And so I think just getting as much feedback as possible from other people.
Right.
Hearing what they think.
One thing I remember about that time also was that Bookshop Santa Cruz, which very much existed, probably
in the
well
70s,
before I
yeah.
ever came here. They had a section, a bulletin board towards the back there that had, we would put announcements on there. And it was often about housing and things like that. We lived in a lot of communal households and things like that. And it was a very important gathering place. I don't know if that's on your tour or anything, but it was an information place that was, it was like 30 years or 20 years before the internet. This is how we communicated through this bulletin board at Bookshop Santa Cruz.
No, actually, I wasn't aware of the bulletin board. I hadn't heard of that before.
All right.
That's
Yeah,
really cool.
there were, that's during those times, like, everything was print, right? And not digital. So it is interesting to hear how people communicated with each other back then. We'll finish talking about both the walking tour and the exhibit in a few minutes. We're going to take another short break.
Just before starting that audio collage, I want to say that regular listeners to this program will have heard about the bulletin board many times.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. As a listener, I've learned a lot. All right, here's that sound collage.
Welcome back to our Pride Perspectives radio show here on KSQD. I'm Rob Darrow, and we're here tonight with Pat and Kian talking about two exciting LGBTQ plus related events that are happening. Those were the sounds of our Santa Cruz Pride Parade, and hopefully we'll see you out there at the parade on Sunday, June 7th. The parade will start at 11 o'clock. Put it on your calendars now so you'll remember. So, Kian, you've put together this walking tour of the MAH, and you talked about you're a UCSC student, and I'm curious how much longer you're here and what you've learned from your research here.
Yeah, of course. So I'm in my graduating year. I'm actually graduating June 13th. This is my last quarter
Right.
at Santa Cruz.
So you're like leaving town June 13th?
Actually, no, I am staying over the summer.
Oh,
Luckily,
okay.
I got a position working for guest relations at the mall, so I'll be at the front desk.
Oh, you get to hang out for the
part-time
summer.
and hang
Okay.
out for the summer. Exactly.
great.
So I'm not so rushed to like get everything I want to do in Santa Cruz done.
So you get to help promote your walking tour.
Yeah,
then.
of
Tell
course.
the people how they'll access it eventually.
Yeah, so the walking tour will be available. It's a self-guided like map brochure, which you can pick up at the museum starting the weekend of Pride. So that'll be, the Pride is June 7th.
Right.
We'll be passing them out, and you can go pick them up at the museum anytime starting then. And there's also a QR code on there on the physical brochure, so you can do it from your phone, and just in case you don't want to take around the piece of paper. But
Great. Well, that sounds exciting. Are there any other key things about that you want to mention?
yeah, I just want to highlight like how valuable I think the history is just for Santa Cruz history in general. You know, I think it's often overlooked by a lot of people, and I had a lot of fun just researching it personally, and I hope that this brings people in to learn more, and like hopefully it'll be, you know, accessible for people. And yeah, I'm just happy that I got to work on it. I think it's been a really fun project.
What are some reasons that you think it's important to highlight LGBTQ plus history?
I mean, just historically, just from what I've researched, like the queer community in Santa Cruz is like incredibly resilient. They've had, you know, a lot of struggles. There's been a lot of like systemic backlash against them meeting in public and being openly queer in public. And so I think it's just important to highlight that resilience, and to continue to fight for that, because there's still a lot of struggles that queer people face today currently. And so I think it's important to have, you know, open community events and spaces, community spaces for people to meet and to just acknowledge the history.
Did you know any LGBTQ plus history before you started this project? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, so actually growing up in Silver Lake in LA, in high school, we learned a little bit about queer history, and the history was all around me when I was growing up, and I didn't even realize it, to be honest. Because there was a lot going on in Silver Lake. We have the Black Cat Bar. There's also the Mattachine Society with
the stairs there.
The stairs.
Yeah, the Mattachine Society stairs,
yeah,
right.
That's pretty near my house. We would go
Did you
on
know about
walks
that?
around there.
Or did you, as you've gone back home now, realize the importance of it? Or what?
I think I learned about the Mattachine Society just in researching this project, actually.
Okay.
And I was like, that name rings a bell. Like, where have I heard that before? And it's because they have a historical plaque in Silver Lake.
Like in your neighborhood.
In my neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had learned about the Black Cat. I think we did a short unit on like queer history in high school.
Oh, I'm
and it
glad
might
to
have
hear
gotten
that.
Brought up. Yeah.
Yeah, we passed a law in 2015 saying that it's supposed to be taught in high school. So it's cool that you were able to kind of branch these different parts of the state.
Yeah.
Good history to know.
Yeah.
So, Pat, what do you want people to know about the exhibit at London Nelson, and why is it important for them to go see it?
Sure. The exhibit at London Nelson is, it's called Out of the Closet into the Streets, 50 plus years of LGBTQ plus history in Santa Cruz County. And it is open right now. It's open any of the hours that the London Nelson Community Center is open, which is a lot of hours. And so you come on down there. It's right in the corridor there, so you'll be able to see it as soon as you get in there. And it has some links also to other places where you can take more of a deep dive if you're interested in that, either in history for yourself, or if you're looking for educational resources for schools of all levels. You could get that through, QR codes that are there, or you could also just go visit the Santa Cruz Pride website or the MAH website for their sections on queer story. It's called at the MAH, and the history section at the Santa Cruz Pride website. And you'll get a lot more information that way. And I am just so proud of the MAH and of Santa Cruz Pride, and thankful to London Nelson also for all that they've done over the years to keep our history alive. We do have a little plaque. It's not a plaque so much, but one of our posters at the London Nelson exhibit is about London Nelson supporting the various queer groups over the years. So it's very fitting that's where this exhibit is being held.
Yeah, the city of Santa Cruz runs that London Nelson Center. They've done a great job of putting it together, and it was sure fun being there with you as part of the opening of that exhibit. We had a number of people that spoke there, including our Senator, John Laird. And, I remember his comment that he said, I go to all these meetings every day, and I'm always a little hesitant of the groups of people I'm with. But when I come home to Santa Cruz in this room, I'm at my most comfortable place. Because John remembers when he first came out and when he first walked through those doors as part of that first Gay Men's organization. John, along with lots of other people, had important stories that night. Is there one of those other speakers that you remember from that event, Pat?
Well, we did hear from Gail and Dinah Phillips and Gail Groves, who were the first couple who were married in Santa Cruz County by the county clerk at the time, now our assembly member, Gail Pellerin, in the county building. And so that was a very joyous occasion when
back in 2008.
Yeah, there were kind of ups and downs in terms of being able to marry or not. But they were the first in Santa Cruz County. And they are now they've been designated as the Grand Marshals of the 2026 Santa Cruz Pride Parade. So you can see them there. So it was great to hear their stories about what they were thinking before this all, before they got married and how it's been for them. But I also was very moved by Adam Spickler, who is on the Cabrillo
Board of Trustees.
Trustees.
Yeah.
But he's also been active in our community for a very, very long time.
First out transgender man to be elected.
And he talked a lot about his experience with being transgender, especially today in today's climate, and how he and his partner, have to react to the realities of how the federal government is looking at transgender people. Yeah. So that was very heartfelt. And frankly, also, when John was speaking, he did tear up a few times, and I was very moved by that too. I mean, He's been active since 1981, I think, is when he was elected to the city council and became mayor. He's been doing this all this time, and I realize now that I called him an assembly member, but he's a senator now. So he's a state senator. Sorry, John, but you've had every position, so but he has a great position in all of our hearts, that's for sure. John Laird.
I think the other important point is you're making about our Senator John Laird, as well as other people who have risen to important positions in politics, is that many of those thoughts started in small groups, like that first Santa Cruz Pride in 1975 and the gay men's group that met at London Nelson Center. Those conversations among those people led people to go on and take on leadership roles in a variety of different ways. Is there another place that you want to talk about, Kian, besides those two that you think is especially significant for people to know about?
Yeah, the other one I wanted to highlight, I mean, we've already talked about it a little bit, but the San Lorenzo Park, the site of the first Santa Cruz Pride, which that's so exciting that you were actually there. That is incredible. And I am
I was at the, and that's when we had the tug of war across the river. The one and only time we did that, but it was there. And there's a film that it's a really degraded film. Did you see it
I've
at all?
seen it.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that the whole film doesn't exist, but you can still see some of that, the interaction there. But then for many, many years, until frankly the early 2000s, I think, we always had it in San Lorenzo Park. So in that year, we just met at San Lorenzo and stayed there. But then a year or two later, we started coming down Pacific Avenue and walking to San Lorenzo Park. And that was for decades, that's what we did. So and there was the duck pond there. We would have the speakers up there. And that was just, a wonderful day to be outside in the park and, having picnics and everything. And that's a great memory for so many of us because it happened for so long.
Right.
And we would be dancing and all sorts of things. And
just continued to grow over the years, huh?
Right, yeah.
Lots of parades down Pacific that ended up in San Lorenzo Park.
Indeed.
Any other final thoughts that either of you want to share for our listeners before we kind of close out our show tonight?
I just want to say, yeah, I'm excited to, I guess, finish this project and actually finally release it to the public. I'm really excited because we have the launch event that's going to be on First Friday, but that is closed to the public, and then that Sunday we're going to be able to disperse it and give it out to everyone at the parade and at the museum. And yeah, I'm just excited for people to see it.
Pat, it would be great at some point you and I could lead some tours on the actual walking tour and have these same conversations walking around the city of Santa Cruz. We'll have to see what we can work out with you, Kian. Since you're sticking around this summer, we could schedule something together. So that'll be fun. Final thoughts about London Nelson and the exhibit. How long does it last until?
It's going till the day, well, actually to Pride Day. It'll still be open on Pride Day, which
on Pride
is June
weekend,
7th.
June 7th.
Yeah.
Great.
And then we take it down the next day. So it's open till then. And I don't have really much to say about that, but I do believe that that looking at our history is so helpful for us in terms of people who were not totally connected to it, were not even born yet or whatever, or not really totally part of the community. But it shows how resilient the community is and how we came up with responses even to the worst situations like the AIDS crisis and a lot of political, setbacks. And that forming community and bringing community together is so important for us to support each other and to move forward. And I'm so happy that Kian, you've been working on this. It's I'm looking forward to doing something that I wasn't personally involved with.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So Kian, one more quick question for you. So Pat mentioned this, but you've also mentioned the importance for younger people to know about this history. Why is that important to you as a person who's not part of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, of course. I think people kind of limit themselves if they don't identify with the community. They think, oh, it's someone else's history. It's not really for me. And they might overlook the fact that this is an important history in shaping not just Santa Cruz, but like all of America or the United States.
Yeah.
I think, of course, Santa Cruz is a great example of that. Like, just because of how active that community was in those like early years. But I think it's important for young people to know so that, it doesn't get forgotten, because a lot of these stories aren't widely available. They're kind of, a lot of people hold on to them. And I think it's important to share them and be able to, use the lessons from them. Great.
Let's work together, get that out to our schools so they all know about that as well.
I think we should.
Great. So thank you both for being here. Pat, I asked if you had a quote for us tonight. We always end with a quote on our show.
Sure. I chose "Out of the Closet into the Streets." Now, that is a slogan that we used a lot in the 1970s, 80s, and beyond. And it was particularly relevant in the early days because so many people were in the closet. I think it actually was an outgrowth from Harvey Milk, the San Francisco supervisor from back in the 70s, who was then murdered. But that's a whole other show. But his philosophy, and then became the philosophy of a lot of us, is that if we just keep hiding, nobody's going to even know who we are. And we have to come out, whatever profession you're in, you're coming out. And the Pride parade is very much about coming out. And so many things are very much about us showing that we're just regular people living regular lives and want the same kind of things as everybody else. And so that people can see us. But another component of Out of the Closet into the Streets is that not just to get into the streets, to march in the streets, but to do political action. So that we're not just accepting that what comes down that is not in our favor, that we have to band together and oppose things that are against us and against all other marginalized communities. So we have to also remember that it's just not, we're one marginalized community and there's many others, and we all need to work together to support each other.
For sure. Thank you for that. We've got a lot of upcoming events you want to pay attention to. First of all, the LGBTQ plus exhibit is open now at London Nelson Center now until June 7th. Drop by anytime that center's open. The Queer Story Walking Tour will be available at the mall beginning the weekend of June 6th, and it'll also be on the mall website. May 30th, there's at the London Nelson Center is the Retro Rainbow Prom for older adults or anybody who wants to come to a prom. Check it out on the London Nelson website. As I mentioned earlier, Saturday, June 6th, will be the 4th annual Queerlantis event at Vets Hall in downtown Santa Cruz. It's a micro-festival featuring music, drag, and dancing, and we're excited to announce that our spotlight performer will be Irene the Alien, the fiercely talented queen from RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars in Season 10, as well as music from Robbie Fitzsimmons. In addition to our local drag artists, they'll also be featured. Get your tickets today on the Santa Cruz Pride website, and remember, June 7th is the annual Pride Parade and Festival, and we look forward to seeing all of you there. Later in the month in June, June 27th, will be Monterey Peninsula Pride, the last Sunday in June. All of these shows are recorded, so if you missed one, find it wherever you get your podcasts under the name Pride Perspectives. Also find it on our website, santacruzpride.org. Our next show later in May will feature both people from our Queerlantis performances and people who are involved in the Considering Matthew Shepard performance, which will be June 14th. I should have mentioned that as well. Peace United's putting that on June 14th. And that's going to be a benefit to our scholarship for queer youth. We look forward to seeing all of you there. Thanks again for listening to Pride Perspectives, conversations and stories to celebrate the LGBTQ plus culture and history across Santa Cruz and Monterey counties.
1, 2, 3, 4, surf.